Alex, you have been talking to the guys and girls that are making Deathloop at the moment, which is coming out in September. It sounds like a really amazing, interesting game. Everybody's looking forward to it. But the thing that caught my attention is you've told me about a mechanic that I've never heard of before. It sounds really interesting, but also really hard to pull off. Can you tell me a bit more about Julianna invading your game?
Yeah, so Julianna is essentially the main antagonist in Deathloop. She's trying to stop you from breaking the time loop that you're stuck in for reasons that we don't really know about yet. She will invade your game at random intervals. You won't know when. You'll hear like a musical little jingle and you'll know, okay, she's in my game. She's going to try and stop me, so I need to be alert. But the thing is, it could be just an AI, Julianna, so just kind of like every other enemy in a way. But it could actually be another player who's decided to log on to Deathloop and go, I don't want to play my campaign at the moment, I want to invade someone else's. And that sort of throws up all kinds of unpredictable factors into the mix. So, you could have someone who's just playing psychological torture on you the whole time. You could have someone who's kind of trying to role play as Julianna. You could have someone who's being friendly and just sort of helping you maybe. It could be really broken. We don't really know until it's play tested on a wide scale. So that's something that's really exciting to look forward to.
And the makers of the game were really wanted to point out to you when you chatted to them that somebody could come in and they can be really helpful. Like if they've done this level already, they can be like, hey, go over here and helping you with stuff. But we know that gamers do like to troll. They do like to be the aggressor. And this part of this role within the game of being able to jump in is, you are the antagonist. You are the person that is trying to stop Colt from completing his mission. So there is an inherent part of this that's no, I'm going to be stopping this player. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they balance that so that it isn't just it takes the fun out of the game, because that's the worry, is if it takes the fun out of the game, people are just going to stop playing it. But it's also I can imagine the trepidation of you hear that chime or that noise and you're like, oh, is it going to be the AI? I know how to defeat the AI. I'm much more worried about if it isn't the AI, if it's a person that really knows this game inside and out. So I think that's really interesting, but let's take it a step back and let's explain exactly what the game is within this idea?
Yeah, so Deathloop takes place on an island called Black Reef, which is kind of like this hedonistic, ultra-rich paradise where, sort of the upper echelons of society have managed to figure out how to just repeat. Basically, they figured out immortality by just repeating the same day over and over again. And when you can do that, there's no consequences, right? So you can have parties where you kill people or, do things to yourself that you probably wouldn't if you knew, there'd be repercussions the next day. And you are Colt and you're stuck in this time loop and you want to get out. But unfortunately, there's a bounty on your head. So to break the time loop, you essentially have to kill the 8 visionaries on the island, which are sort of the people who are responsible for keeping this time loop going. So your job essentially is to pull off the perfect string of assassinations, killing 8 people in a single day, lining them up, figuring out how to do it through failure. You're going to be repeating the same day a lot. And also contending with Julianna, like we talked about. The
other thing that I really like about it is it's very stylized. And it looks amazing, and the gunplay and the powers and everything and the look of every level is slightly different, and all of the enemies and the bosses are different as well. And the way that they've explained it to you is basically Dishonored with guns.
Yeah, I mean, if you've played Dishonored, I feel like you will feel a familiarity there. There's even some of the powers that Colt has are drawn directly from Dishonored. It's not called Blink, but you essentially have the Blink ability where you can, teleport with your hand essentially. But yeah, this isn't you can play stealthily, but it's just as sort of viable in open warfare, which is probably something you couldn't really do very well in Dishonored. There's a lot of guns and powers that you can use, and Colt is, more than capable of dishing damage to multiple targets at once. But with the assassinations, the cool thing is that there are ways to kill them without sort of getting up too close to them. One of the things that I saw was you're at a party. One of the visionaries is hosting a party. Unfortunately, it's a completely masked, masquerade type thing, so you don't know who your target is. But you eventually figure out from a previous loop that he's actually giving a speech on the evening. So you see him go up onto the stage, and the stage just so happens to have a trapdoor. You eventually find out for a previous loop that there's a button for the trapdoor which opens. Lo and behold, you can press it and down he goes into essentially an industrial blender. So there's lots of different ways it's kind of like Hitman in that sense. There's lots of different ways to kill your targets. It doesn't have to be open warfare, but at the same time, the gunplay looks really solid. There's a variety of guns you can use, all kind of inspired, like you say, by that really cool aesthetic, which is kind of like 60s exploitation movies kind of vibe meets James Bond. The music's great. It gets going once you're in that open warfare state. So I think there's a lot of, I'm really curious to see how players like mess around with the different systems at play here.
But the thing that kind of strikes me about it with Dishonored and with Hitman, you can kind of just like check stuff out beforehand, plan your strategy, look at stuff, check it out. And this is a lot more frantic. There's a lot more action involved. And it's not that you're running in blindly, like running in just hell for leather and everything's going mental. But there is that element of like, let's just break stuff and see what happens. Like you say, like, let's push buttons, let's see what's under that stand and let's go in here. And it just seems like with all the powers and stuff, it's a much more of a frenetic action, crazy smorgasbord of attempts, and then you go, okay, what did I learn? And do it again.
Yeah, and like unlike Dishonored or Hitman, when you die, it will get to a point in the campaign where you figure out how to bring your upgrades and your powers with you through subsequent runs. So you don't just reset with nothing at the start. When you die, you'll wake up and you'll go, okay, I know a little bit more and I still have everything with me. So you're essentially getting better and better with every subsequent run, to the point where you're a master assassin by, your 100th run, whereas everyone else is still on the same day as far as they know. So there's this really interesting like mechanic there where it's like kind of like a self-improvement therapy in a way. So I think, that'll be really interesting to see. And, like you say, there's a lot of stuff going on, but that doesn't, that shouldn't mean you should feel overwhelmed. Like you've got plenty of time. Like the day's not going to stop until you break it.
I love the idea of Deathloop being self-improvement assassin therapy all within one day. So if any of this has kind of interested you in the game, and if you're a fan of Hitman or Dishonored or any of these assassin games or any of these loop games, the game's coming out in September. We're going to have loads of coverage up until then. It was supposed to be coming out now, really. So hopefully the game's pretty much done, and they'll take this time up until September just to make it amazing. So keep checking out Games Radar for all the information on Deathloop, any new trailers, any new gameplay, and all of our reviews on the game when it comes out in September.